There's a long litany of reports that the U.S. government has authored on UFOs, and many of them show dramatic UFO evidence for real.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 UFO incidents so crazy the government actually responded.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most unbelievable UFO incidents that the government was involved with. Let us know in the comments if you believe the government is covering up the truth.
Hey Mojoholics! For a chance to win cash prizes, play our live daily trivia challenges every day at 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern only at WatchMojo.com/play.
Number 10. Middle East Metallic Orb. In 2023, this footage from the previous year was released to the public by none other than NASA. In it, you can clearly see an object, described by officials as a metallic orb, flying through the air during a reconnaissance mission somewhere in the Middle East. The footage was captured by an MQ-9 Reaper drone and was subsequently investigated by the Pentagon, which has been unable to explain what it might be.
So far, no sign of alien involvement.
No credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity.
It's not the only time an object like this has been seen either. Others have been spotted, which has led some to speculate that it might be some kind of top-secret human craft, though we're still none the wiser as to how it might work.
The Washington Post reports leaked intelligence documents, not verified by NBC News, suggest China could soon deploy a high-altitude spy drone able to travel at 3 times the speed of sound.
Number 9. 2 witnesses. In 2018, 2 completely separate commercial pilots said they saw a UFO in the skies over Arizona while flying.
Pilots in 2 different planes, one a Learjet, the other an American Airlines jet, reported seeing a mysterious object over Arizona last month.
A pilot for Learjet was so alarmed by what he saw that he contacted air traffic control in nearby New Mexico, though nothing had been spotted on radar.
And was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
Number 71 Papa Golf negative.
And then, after being warned to keep an eye out, an American Airlines pilot also saw an object, which he described as passing over the airplane at least 2,000 to 3,000 feet above him.
Yeah, something just passed over us. Don't know what it was.
Authorities quickly got involved and released a statement that it was almost certainly a weather balloon. But that explanation hasn't washed with the pilots, who say it was something else entirely. Number 8. Lubbock Lights. Back in 1951, when the UFO craze was only just beginning to take hold in modern America, there was a widely publicized sighting down in Texas.
In the middle of the evening, a lot of witnesses saw this. Some of the key witnesses were these professors at Texas Technical College, and they see this pattern of lights.
Dozens of strange lights were seen flying overhead, which experienced scientists decided couldn't have been a meteor shower. The event was widely reported on and eventually investigated by Project Blue Book, the USAF's top-secret program to research UFO sightings.
Fortunately, they were photographed by a young man named Carl Hart, who actually took a series of photographs that are very interesting and have been studied quite a lot by photo analysts and UFO researchers.
There was an extensive investigation that deduced that the lights were simply large birds flying under Lubbock's street lamps. But many remain unconvinced to this day, perhaps because the investigation refused to explain what its source for their theory really said.
So what was it that Carl Hart and dozens of others witnessed in the skies over Lubbock so many years ago? Carl is as baffled as the rest of us.
Number 7. Phoenix Lights. Moore, Arizona, an extremely well-known and well-documented UFO encounter happened there in 1997. A series of bright lights were seen across Arizona and even Nevada flying in formation.
People across Arizona, especially here in the valley, reported seeing a silent, miles-long V-shaped group of lights gliding quietly overhead.
There was an additional triangular object that was reported on as well, though the lights and the object could have been one and the same. But what were these anomalous UFOs?
So many have tried to explain the lights as flares, secret government aircraft, or something to do with the Hale-Bopp comet that was supposed to make an appearance that night.
Well, the U.S. military was blamed in this case, with the USAF coming out to explain that it was a test flight and training exercise, and even explaining that the pilots had supposedly been dropping flares.
Officially, the U.S. government says that night people saw military flares dropped from 15,000 feet by Maryland National Guard, who took off from Davis-Monthan before conducting a training exercise over Phoenix.
The governor of Arizona even got involved, though he didn't take the idea that aliens could be behind the incident seriously. Number 6. USS NIMITZ TIC-TAC UFO. Navy jet pilots captured this footage of what's been described as a TIC-TAC UFO back in 2004, but the footage wasn't released until 2020, 16 years later.
Showing an object about 40 feet long, hovering about 50 feet above the water. Weird, right?
It was spotted by numerous pilots and given that nickname because it really did look like a tic-tac, but it flew erratically and extremely quickly through the air.
It's moving around, left, right, forward, back. The radar immediately starts getting jammed. All of a sudden, it takes off.
The footage is striking, to say the least, though some officials thought that it wasn't being taken seriously enough. One pilot said that the UFOs could be a foreign incursion, made more worrying by them showing up in restricted airspaces. The Pentagon has started to take more of an interest in UFOs, perhaps due to these sightings.
Pentagon officials say the videos were released to clear up any misconceptions over whether the footage was real.
Number 5. Jimmy Carter UFO Incident. Back in 1969, 8 years before he would become the President of the United States, Jimmy Carter spotted a UFO in Georgia.
There is no reasonable explanation for the strange object he is seeing in the sky. It truly is something he can't identify.
He didn't have much of a political career at that point and claimed that he and various witnesses saw a, quote, bright white object in the sky that then changed color and rapidly changed directions, all hallmarks of UFO sightings.
There have been numerous attempts to explain the sighting.
Some have speculated that perhaps what Jimmy Carter saw was some type of weather balloon filled with helium.
A few years later, and Carter was governor of Georgia, at which point he made a statement to investigators. Carter even promised to disclose America's knowledge of UFOs if elected president in the 70s, and though he was elected, he went back on this particular pledge.
Carter makes a U-turn, retracting his promise to declassify UFO documents and make key reports public. He cites a serious threat to national security as the reason for backing down.
Number 4. Falcon Lake Incident. Canada's most famous UFO incident, also in 1969, a man named Stefan Mihalik had a strange encounter at Falcon Lake in Manitoba.
Looking on the tree, I noticed two cigarette-like shape things with the hump in the middle. I said, what the hell is that?
He saw multiple UFOs in the sky, and then one opened a door, and he said he heard American voices from within. Eventually, he was struck by a heat ray, and when he later turned up at a hospital, his strange injuries were documented in great detail.
Stephen was released from the hospital, but he says his symptoms worsened. The nausea continued, and his body seemed to emit a sulfuric stench.
Interestingly, Mihalik never blamed extraterrestrials, instead believing he'd encountered a top-secret American aircraft and that it had somehow given him radiation sickness with the heat ray. Regardless, the sighting was extensively investigated by both the Royal Canadian Air Force and the USAF.
Within days, a team of experts from the United States working in cooperation with the Royal Canadian Air Force converged on the site. They took measurements, cataloged soil samples, and checked for radiation.
Number 3. Rendlesham Forest. From Canada to the UK, the Rendlesham Forest incident is often dubbed Britain's Roswell. In 1980, USAF personnel stationed abroad at RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk saw the lights of an unidentified object land in the nearby forest.
The story goes that a number of US servicemen saw an alien spacecraft near their Air Force base in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk in 1980.
They went to investigate and found what could be described as an alien spacecraft, though it later disappeared and left mysterious burn marks behind.
And that's when we saw the object out here, and it came into the forest. It went through the trees, bobbing up and down, traveling primarily in a horizontal plane, but it would go up and down a bit.
Because the witnesses were experienced airmen, the incident was taken very seriously, and it was even reported to the UK's Ministry of Defence and investigated by the police, though not in as much detail as anyone would have liked.
Holt's report was backed up by Sergeant Jim Peniston, who later said he touched a spacecraft. So the mystery of Rendlesham is still very much alive.
Number 2, the invasion of Washington. In 1952, there was an unprecedented wave of UFO sightings in Washington, D.C., centered around Washington National Airport.
Multiple unidentified flying objects are picked up on radar by air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base.
Multiple objects appeared on radar and overhead, spotted not just by civilians, but by many pilots and highly trained officials who would be able to identify aircraft in the sky. Some thought the strange lights were meteors, and a media frenzy began.
So it happened twice on 2 consecutive weekends, meaning that more and more people saw the same thing.
The situation was so serious, with others believing it was a Soviet plot to create mass hysteria in America, that President Truman himself ordered it investigated. The Air Force and the CIA got involved, and to this day, the event hasn't been fully explained.
The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. Number 1, the Roswell UFO Incident. Yes, though it's been thoroughly debunked in recent years, the government was still deeply involved with Roswell from start to finish.
The incident sparked a UFO scare and inspired decades of science fiction movies.
Initially written off as a simple weather balloon crash when it happened in '47, Roswell eventually took on a life of its own in ufology circles because of how quickly the authorities swept in to cover it all up.
In this photo right here, the official government photos and the press release is not the debris that he found in the field.
I see my grandfather holding up something that he knew that wasn't what he found.
We now know that the reason it was covered up is because the balloon was part of a classified mission to try and detect Soviet nuclear bomb tests. And the US didn't want this getting out at the time because the Cold War was just beginning.
The Roswell debris was part of a different kind of balloon, one used in the top-secret Project Mogul. Essentially an airborne bugging device to listen out for possible Soviet nuclear tests and missile launches.
But Roswell remains the most famous close encounter in history nonetheless. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.